Hybrid and electric car sales. We're going live right now. We're going to be doing we're actually starting the transmission pull of a 2014 Ford Fusion Hybrid. So we're going to just be broadcasting what I got going on here in the shop. Stay with me. First thing is taking off the wheels. I'll try to give you the best view of the car as I can through all this. There you go. All right, well, stay with me, all right? First part of the job is taking the wheels off, all the cowls off, and draining the coolant. We specialize in these transmissions, rebuilding them. This is a hybrid. Ask any questions, you know, if you're tuned in. This is our first time underneath the car, and we got the classic transmission leak. Let me show you what's going on. You can actually see it right there on the floor. The car's only been sitting here for about 20 minutes, maybe an hour. All right, so this is the transmission right here, from this part this way. And we have two sides of the transmission. We have the drive side, and then we have the EV side where the stators are. And what happens is these leak back here at this back axle. I don't know if you can see it there. You can kind of see it up in that corner right here. All right. This is where the leak happens, and the axle has so much play in it. You hear that? That's just the axle moving around in the differential in there. So that's part of the problem with these is the fluid comes out, causes bearing destruction in there, and then it kind of eats itself up. So we're gonna rebuild this transmission, and that's what we do here. We do quite a few of these transmissions a year. So we're gonna take down all these panels. It's already missing the under tray. We'll take down this panel, it's held on with some zip ties. We will get to draining the transmission fluid and draining the coolant out of the car. Those are the first steps, and we'll go from there. And then we'll go disconnect all the battery and everything like that. Zip ties have no place in cars like this. Gracious. This thing's probably gonna end up in the trash. I'm not gonna save that. Okay. Take this down next. These are all comprised of Torx and 7mm. I've never seen one with full hardware. Actually, I think one of the last ones I worked on had actually every original screw, which is odd because you got to take the cover down and do an oil change. And over the years, the cover gets lost, the screws get lost. I've even seen like holes cut in them for oil change technicians, especially fleet cars, so they don't have to take down a cover every time. Stop messing up my shop floor. So I got the remainder of the cover. All right, let's do transmission fluid first. Check out the color of this stuff. I'll bring you guys in so you can see what the color of this transmission fluid actually looks like. This is going to be black and smelly. Let's get up here. Yep. This is an American size drain plug. Everything else on the car is metric. Well, I've had that discussion before. I can't tell a metric nut from a regular nut from anything. All I use is metric here. All right, let's take this out. Let me get a flashlight. See what this looks like. Oh my gosh. Okay, so that is pure black. Let's see if you guys can see that. Yeah, not a good color. That is not what you want to see. That's pretty burnt up. You know, service life on Mercon LV is 150,000 miles according to Ford. It's very similar to Dexron 6 or 7 or whatever the heck it's called. That has a service life of 100,000 miles. You know, we say 60 or less. After a rebuild, you need to be changing the transmission fluid every 30,000 miles. Because that metal goes through there, it gets flushed through. We get as much out as we possibly can, but you got to pick up the rest of it out of there. And it all comes down to just doing frequent changes after the rebuild. So eventually you'll flush it all out before any additional damage is done. We've been changing our guidelines and everything for our rebuild, so. But we changed. You guys are funny in the chat. It is like squid ink, honestly. But we changed the transmission fluid after 5,000 miles after the rebuild. So this one's going to rebuild in 5,000 miles. He's going to have to change the fluid again. And then after that, it's 30,000 mile intervals. And that seems to keep him healthy. We'll get the cooler lines loosened here also. This tends to be a more difficult part of the job. They put a ton of Loctite on this bolt, this cooler bolt. I don't know why. It's very difficult. Oh, this one's not too bad. The earlier cars are just, oh. How tight that is? Like, just way too much Loctite on just a cooler line bolt. Let's move this. I want to position this so you can see the cooler line. So these are the transmission cooler lines. The cooler's up here in the front. We've cross-flushed the cooler as part of this job, but we're going to pull these out. Again, not looking too healthy there either. Not shimmering too much, just really, really black and nasty. I know there's a lot of metal in there though. All right, so we're just gonna let this drain for a couple minutes. All the fluid we can get out of the transmission now is less transmission fluid we have to deal with during the rebuild process, because we're gonna suck it all out, flush it all out. So we're just gonna let this sit and drain for a minute here, especially the big one. These coolers should drain out pretty easily. Make sure you save all that hardware. Okay. So I put the O-rings back in, and then I just, for the time being, shove it back in there so it stops leaking. I take the clamp seals off, and I set them aside. Now, hopefully that will allow the transmission to stop leaking all over me now that we got the fluid all out. So the next part we're going to do, once this is finished draining, is draining the coolant. And I drain it from this line right here. This is the thermostat to the car, and then there's a main coolant line coming off of there. There's no peacock on the radiator, at least that I've ever found. Rumor has it there's maybe one over here or something like that, but I can't find it. So we just take this main line off, flushes it out pretty quickly. I leave the cap on. It slows down the drip. It does take a little bit longer to do it, but it also helps keep some of the coolant up in the heater core, so it's not as bad of a bleed job once you're putting the car all back together. Again, just tips and tricks to try to help you out with it. If you're attempting this yourself, we do sell the full rebuild kit on our website. The price, our cost went up again. The beginning of the year, they raised it another 10%, I think it was. And you know, it's not like one individual part. It's like every part goes up a couple bucks, and there's 21 parts in the kit. So the one very expensive piece is the transfer gear. That's 50% of the cost of the kit. And that transfer gear, you can press the bearings on and off, but nearly everybody I know who has tried to press those bearings on and off of that transfer gear ends up something's not right in the transmission after the rebuild. It's like it doesn't go back together correctly. And I think Ford knows that, and that's why they only sell it as a complete gear instead of just the bearings. allowing you to press on and off. Now this is a Georgia car. This thing's rust free, so this is gonna be a little bit easier to work on. But if you're up north in Michigan or up there, man, your cars can get rusty. And Ford did you no favors on rust protection. It's atrocious on these cars, and these things can get super bad. I've actually had to turn some away due to subframe bolts not coming out. I couldn't get the subframe bolts. They were rusted in there, and if I would have put any more, you know, pressure on it, I'd risk breaking them. And breaking a subframe bolt is just not fun, and that is not in my wheelhouse, so wanting to fix that at all. So better than totaling the car out, because that's essentially what happens. It's coming. There you go. Okay. There we go. Don't know what that was. All right, so this is the coolant draining out, so we'll just let this go. This seems to have some yellow. This is not the factory coolant. Okay, you deleted messages. I don't know what happened here. Okay. Sorry, I got some coolant here on the screen. I'm gonna try to wipe it down. There we go. All right, so this is gonna take about 10 minutes for this to drain completely out, but we'll just talk. Usually we get started on the rest of the stuff, the suspension. I'll move this down here in a second. And okay, so we're gonna start working on the suspension and wheel wells and all of that over on this side. So I'll try to give you a view of what we got going on here. And like I said, the drain's gonna take a minute or two, so I like to keep moving in my shop. So next we take the fender liner out, and we'll take off all the suspension. I always like to squirt a little penetrating lube down in these little fittings there. Definitely helps them come apart. Not too good. But I was saying about the parts pricing and everything, Ford keeps raising the prices of this stuff, and I'll tell you, when I first started selling this kit in this job, I could do it for $3,500. Now it's $4,200, just to let you know. And the reason it's gone up, I'm working on a 2014 Ford Fusion Hybrid. And the only thing that's gone up is not my labor rate. I haven't raised anything on my side. It's all Ford's parts. This kit used to have a wholesale cost of like $1,350, and I'd sell it for like $1,450, $1,500. You know, not a huge markup. You know, my labor was my profit, and they kept raising it and raising it and raising it. It's crazy. And like I said, that transfer gear used to be $450, and now that transfer gear is $1,100 for the same part. And there's no workaround. I can't find anybody else making them, so we're kind of stuck with what we got. If you want to rebuild it, the only other option is a new remanufactured transmission, which we can get for you. We do the reman transmission install for $5,100. We do the full rebuild. They didn't raise the price on the full transmission. And then, like I said, this job is $4,200. Got some broken trim there. But you know, the cars, in some cases, these cars are absolutely worth fixing. You know, you can't go buy a decent used car right now for less than 10 grand, unfortunately. You know, I try every day. Try to bring low price, you know, value hybrids to market, and I can't find them. You know, they're out there once in a while. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but nothing in volume. You know, I can't put a lot full of $10,000 Hondas here, Honda hybrids. There's just not enough of them to go around. And speaking of that, I was just having a conversation with a client. You know, I have two Priuses here right now. I never get a lot of Priuses. And they were asking me why. And, you know, I thought about that for a second. And I was like, well, you know, most people buy a Prius, they keep it forever. You know, the only time I'm really getting a Prius is, you know, someone sold it. You know, rarely are they traded in with less than like 100,000 miles on it, because most people are just going to drive it until the wheels fall off. You know, I hear that term so much, but it's true with the Prius drivers. They really do. And time they are traded in, you know, 200, 300,000 miles are on them. The car is completely worn out. So, a lot of crap up in here. All right, so we took the fender liner out. Now we're going to start taking the suspension apart. I leave the caliper bracket on. It's really up to you how you want to take all of this apart. But this is the way we do it. The reason I leave the caliper bracket on is because I leave the rotors on, and that will allow the caliper bracket to hold the rotors in place. All right, let's get everything here. And I pull out the ABS sensor too. $10mm on the caliper bracket. And then I use an S-hook to just suspend it from the shock. And usually that outside pad stays in there. I think they glue them from the factory or something. 18mm on the top for the sway bar link. And again, being a rust-free car, these come apart pretty easily. You guys from up north who work on these cars, man, you know how rusty they can get. It comes right off. Gently remove the ABS sensor. Pop off its bracket. Completely take the sway bar link out, move it down to the side, and then I always wrap the ABS sensor kind of in a knot and kind of push it away up here under the other wiring. So all that leaves is taking off the nut here for the axle and the 24mm shock bolts, and that'll allow the axle to come out of here. And I always check at this point to make sure the axle free, which this one is, nice and easy. So 24, I think it's some other size, but the 24 works. bolts that hold the suspension in. These are what that means. So these are like this. Why don't you manually saw with the manuals? The transmission. Yeah. No swaps on this. No manual transmission on the hybrid. It's all integrated. So, there you go. And he actually has the isolator washer. So somebody's been in here before. These did not come standard on the 2014. So someone's done a repair. So that's not a bad thing, but this car is very clean. So this suspension's all broken down on this side as far as we need to go. So we're gonna go over to the other side and do the same thing. Coolant's still dripping and draining. All right. So we're going to take down the underliner first. So again, this is the beginning stages. If you're just tuning in or just getting in with us, this is the beginning stages of a transmission rebuild on a Ford Fusion hybrid. We, again, hybrid and electric car sales here. We specialize in these hybrid transmissions and rebuilding them. This car is from Georgia. We're in Tennessee. This was brought to us. They found us on YouTube. We do a lot of videos. We try. We're trying to put together a video of me doing the whole job start to finish. But man, filming it by myself without doing it live is tough. So we're trying to do it live with everybody and then post this video of, okay, these are the steps you take. But editing it, frankly, I just don't have time to edit it. I'm too busy. At night, I got to do other things and edit videos. And, you know, we're not big enough where we would hire somebody for a position like that. Just not there. So much crap falls out of these. Still draining. It's like a nice like fountain in the background. I feel like I'm at like a restaurant. All right, so first thing again, take off the caliper. Stand by. 10mm up here. 8mm for the ABS sensor. Okay. 18mm on the top sway bar link mount. So sweet to take them out so easily. And tie this in a knot, kind of put this up out of the way. Get an S hook. So these S hooks that we use are shower curtain hooks. When it's stainless steel and didn't bend or get out of whack. Yeah, they work pretty well. Yeah, just let that sit there. All right, let's take off the nut, check the axle. If an axle is gonna get stuck in a hub, it's gonna be this one. It's always the passenger or driver's side. That's free. Awesome. Yeah, like I said, I suspect somebody's been in here before. That might explain why everything's coming apart so easy. There it is. Okay, so this is free inlet. And then there again, it has the isolator washer, which is only on 2018s and up from the factory. So someone put this in here, but whoever put it in there did it correctly, so because it's supposed to be there. So that's it for suspension. That's it for the draining. We're just going to let the coolant finish drain. All right, we're back. Yeah, so you guys talking about some upgrades. We could do some upgrades. I don't know about manual swapping a Fusion, if anybody want to pay me to do that. I don't know. Oh, that hurt. Okay. All right. So I bring it back over here. So still draining the coolant. Pretty boring at this point, but we're about done, so I'm gonna put it back up. Alright, so we're just going to continue working on the bottom side here, taking out supports and everything. Take off this cross member. We're going to take down this bracket that will allow us to get to the exhaust. These are all pretty straightforward up here. Still draining out the engine. Alright. So now we'll start taking off the motor mount. And this is, or transmission mount, whatever you want to call it. This bolt I have to do with the breaker bar. Oh, there it goes. And we only pull it out about one full rotation. That bolt and this bolt will never go back in if you take them all the way out. I've seen people get them in and out. It's possible. But don't put yourself through that if you don't have to. Definitely not necessary. So these are the back bolts for the transmission. We're going to take these down. Oh, geez. Wrong one. Sorry, it's been a long day. That's to the frame. challenging. You have to do it all by hand. You can only get a wrench back there. And you have to take those other 2 bolts out, or you'll never be able to get this one out and the wrench, or the wrench will end up pinching itself against the rack, and then you're in a big trouble. So you take the other bolts out, and that'll allow the engine to swing forward a little bit to get this bolt in there. It's loose enough to do by finger. Last bolt. Alright, I need to clean up, rip my gloves. So, thanks for sticking with me. Continue to work on this, get it all out. Show you a little bit about what we do here at Hybrid Electric Car Sales back in the shop. You know, a big part of our business is the sales aspect of it. And the coolant is still draining. Okay. Yeah, I'll be right back. All right, so to recap, Red Bull, taking off the under tray, taking off the support tray, that is covers up the core support carrier, taking off the suspension, at least the hubs from the shocks. We've removed the axles from the hubs. We will remove the axles from the car once the subframe's out. The next step is really just letting this coolant drain enough and then lowering the car back down, and I'll start working on the top side, which is removing the airbox, the inverter, all the wiring for the inverter and the transmission, and then we'll remove the coolant bypass or fitting, whatever, EGR, and that will allow us to unbolt the transmission, and then it goes from there. That we are not doing tonight. We will lower the car down, we'll start unbolting things from the top, but we're not taking the transmission out right now. I have somewhere I'm going to be at 7 o'clock, so I don't have time to get it out fully. But we're just going to let this drain out a little bit more. Where's everybody from? If you put in the chat, we're in Franklin, Tennessee. We're about 15 minutes south of Nashville. I've lived here for 5 years, going on 6 years now. I got transferred here by my old company, Sonic Automotive. I used to run used car departments and dealerships for them, and I had a good time with that company. Got to see a lot of the country, but we settled here in Tennessee and we love it here. A lot of people are here from other parts of the country, escaping wherever. We kind of just wound up here on a whim. We knew we wanted to go south. We lived in Georgia for a while, lived in Pennsylvania, Virginia, Washington, D.C. Hear that? It's finally stopped. All right, now we can put this back together. Before I got into hybrids and EVs, I've specialized in BMW. And, all right, from British Columbia. I did BMW for over a decade. Definitely one of my favorite brands. I think they got it together. Never owned a used one. The trick with BMW is leasing a new one and giving it back after 3 years. Well, you know, have them cover the maintenance, have them cover the warranty and the problems that come up. You know, rarely rarely did I have a problem with my cars in that 3-year period when I did a lease. Rarely did I even keep them 3 years, but they were always good cars. The trick to a BMW is you have to drive it hard. You have to drive it hard. You can't sit back on it. You can't drive slow. You have to rev it. It has to go through the gears. It's got to get hot. You got to get it up to temperature. And I've used that for a long time, and I've always had fantastic luck with those cars. Now, getting into Tesla and all of that, these are completely different animals, but I will tell you, coming from BMW, these are just as engaging as the BMWs were. Maybe not this Fusion. This is about efficiency, but the Teslas, when compared to the BMWs, I think are very, very equivalent. Performance-wise, they each have their benefits, for sure. I still think the M3, and this is debatable, but the M3, the F10 or whatever they call it, I think, or F01 is the F80. I don't know which one it is, but I had a 2018 comp, but the DCT, I had that car in a manual too, and I like the DCT better. I had an M4, and I thought the manual was pretty good, the 6-speed. All right, we're gonna take off some parts up here, the cowl. Let me move you in here so you can see what we got going on. So what's gonna be coming off is this front section here, the airbox, and then the inverter. And then underneath this inverter, which, and in case you don't know what an inverter is, the inverter is what allows the battery in the trunk to talk to the transmission. And inside the transmission are those 2 electric motors, and they're driven by these 2 outputs here on the inverter. And the inverter also takes the power generated by the electric motors or generators when they're in generator mode back into the inverter and then back into the battery. So it also handles charging too. This piece also powers the auxiliary fluid pump, which is on the car. There's, the electric AC that's on the car, and the heater box, because it's got electric heat also. That goes to it. So there's a lot of things that this thing takes care of. Some are, the energy is a little bit different than the hybrid. So that's it. But all right, we'll get this all going here. A lot of it's just trim in the beginning. But if you could, like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers so I can start trying to get monetized. I don't know if it's going to generate any real money. I'm not doing it for that reason, but I do want to get to 1,000. That's kind of my next milestone. I think we're sitting at 700 and some. So subscribe to it, and appreciate it. Just trying to grow the channel. We're going to go with YouTube as our platform to post on. I know a lot of people are trying to pick TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. We're trying the TikTok thing. It's hard. It's you got to be consistent with it. There's some content creators putting out some really, really high quality stuff. And I get all the props in the world to them. They deserve all the views they get. Probably one of my favorite creators right now or content creators is George Sibilis up at J&S Auto House. He's doing a great job kind of showing, peeling the veil back on the business a little bit, at least for the high-end business, and showing how it's done. He's dealing in super, super high-end cars, but he's a cool guy. Cut that orange wire. Yeah, buddy. What I actually have to do is go disconnect the 12-volt battery. I'm glad you reminded me. And pull the high voltage plug on it, too, before I get into all this. And the hybrid plug right back here. And the reason I take off all this is because I need this mounting point right here to support the transmission, or the radiator when we take the radiator off. Support off. Okay, there we go. Alright, so disconnecting this air box, there's a mass airflow sensor we got to remove, harness at least, it's built in there. See if we can get this one from the side. Never can. You know, doing so many of these, it's funny, like, some of these bolts will be different sizes and different styles, even in the same years. It's kind of funny because I go into this expecting things to be a certain way. All right, so airbox. All right, well, that phone call was somebody from the stream calling in, asking about how much this service is. So thank you so much for the call. And again, you have two options with your repair here. You really got three options, but if you bring me the car, you have two options. So the first option is we rebuild your existing transmission. As long as it is running and driving, and it hasn't eaten into everything and destroyed it, we can rebuild that transmission. The transmission, as long as you follow our service intervals, should last as long as the original one did. If we go with a remanufactured one from Ford, we upgrade you to a 2019-2020 part number that has an upgraded stator design in it. That transmission install is $5,100. This one is $4,200. If it's a C-Max, it's $500 more on labor because the C-Maxes are a pain to do. And almost every single one of them I get's a complete rust bucket. So I had to up my price because they're so much harder than the Fusion, because the C-Max windshield comes to like right here. So you take off all the cowl, but you still have the windshield like overhanging your work area, and it is very tight getting it down there. And you know, I've broken a windshield before, unfortunately, you know, and I got to cover that, and that costs money. That's serious. So the C-Maxes are just tough, and the C-Maxes eat through the transmissions so much faster than the Fusions. I don't know why that is. I can tell you that the parts are cross-compatible. We put Fusion transmissions into the C-Maxes all the time. All right. So right now I'm just removing the fuse box. And at the end of the day, we discovered that all of these transmissions are cross-compatible. No one had taken the time to try to put a newer style into an older car. Somebody did on one of the Fusion forums. He had put an MKZ transmission into an older C-Max, and I was able to cross-reference some part numbers that he had used, and then figured out that a new one would actually fit. So then I worked with my parts supplier, my local Ford dealer, parts manager, and he was able to secure some good transmission part numbers for us, and we share that in some of our other videos. If you follow us, you'll see we have a whole two-part series that was dedicated just to that whole swap and trying that out. And what I'm referring to is upgrading the transmission. So we took a 2013 C-Max and we put in a 2020 Ford Fusion transmission into it, and it worked perfectly. No programming, nothing. No, it was kind of the question that everybody wanted to know was, would it go in without programming? And the answer was yes, because when you take these transmissions apart, you realize there's no computers inside of them. The only wiring harness are sensors, position sensors, temperature sensors, and like park, reverse, shift indicators, and that's it. All right, now we're gonna take the coolant out of this. Hold on, let me put these back in here. I'll keep working around this before I take the coolant out. So, with the harness. So there we go. All right, high voltage cables are disconnected. So I'll get those out of the way. Now we need to disconnect some 13s from the main power box here. This one doesn't have a wire here. Not supposed to, but that's weird. So yeah, we're just getting these cables disconnected from these harnesses just to give us a little bit of slack so we can move all this around. Very tight, these little plugs, not the harnesses, but the little nipples. All right. Okay. So everything is moved. We're going to take out these bolts real quick, these 13s, and then now will allow us to remove the inverter. And like on the Fusion, you know, this can all be done with these impacts and whatnot. On the C-Max, you got to do it all by hand because you can't. There's no room. Okay, so we're going to disconnect the coolant lines on the inverter. I'm going to move this out of the way. And so coolant's going to spill down. Do our best to capture it all. Coolant lines, they can't really see, but we tuck them back here out of the way. Once we got all the coolant out of them we need, get that down here, there we go. And then the inverter will just finish draining, take this cap off, it helps it go faster. And next, then you just lift it out. And there it goes. That's it. So now the inverter is out. And we're left with the bracket here, and we'll remove the bracket. Wires out of the way. Okay. So these are all 13s. There's 4 of them, and then there's 12s in the back. Yeah, hey man, I'm here, Joe. Go ahead. What's your question? I'm see it. All right, this bracket. Thank you. Thanks for the thumbs up. Thank you all. Virginia. All right, cool. Virginia. I used to live in Virginia. Fairfax. Actually used to run part of BMW of Fairfax. BMW of Fairfax. That was like the first big stores I worked at. All right, so we're just working our way down, and what I'm trying to get to is all of this stuff here on the side. I'll show you. It's gonna be hard for you to see it all, but let me get a flashlight. Get all this cleaned up too. All right. So we removed the inverter, which was right here. We removed the inverter shelf, which is the bracket that basically holds it. We disconnected the high voltage cables from the inverter. There's 4 of them. And now we're gonna work on taking the high voltage cables out of the transmission, disconnecting the shifter linkage, and then removing the EGR and this coolant block. There's a bunch of lines, coolant lines in here we have to disconnect, a bunch of electrical connections. But then that will finally give us access to be able to unbolt the transmission. What we also have to do from up here is support the radiator so we can drop out the core support and the lower subframe. At that point, then the transmission will be able to come out. So you can see it's a multi-step job. We're just getting started on this. We're about an hour and a half in. Takes me 4 to 5 hours to remove one of these if I'm hustling. If there's nothing else going on. It can take me an entire day if I gotta keep stopping and going. Let's see, I'm missing something. Oh, here it is, under my Red Bull. So right now I'm taking off the shifter linkage. Oh, there we go. All right, shifter linkage. Just toss that to the side. And the next part's going to be these coolant lines. Let me put all this away. I'm going to take off the high voltage cables. So we're removing the high voltage cables right now. There we go. Okay, there we go. There we go. Those clamps are very, very difficult to get off. And what I'm talking about, I'm going to show you, is this. That's what I was pulling on to try to get that to remove out of this bracket without hurting myself. It's easy to pull up one there. And again, it's just, whew, it's just in there tight. Okay, so then we have voltage cables. Move off some of this. Okay, so just have to clean up this area a little bit. No bolts, no hardware, no tools. All right. So next thing, we're going to start removing the coolant lines to give us access to the EGR. That going on here. Okay, there's one. Okay. All right, so there's the coolant line that we're removing. This will just swing over here out of the way. Okay, and then this one we swing out of the way too, back here. All right, so now we have access to the EGR to remove that. That's two 10mm bolts. Be very, very careful. I recommend removing these by hand or very slowly at least with maybe a socket, but definitely not an impact. Too many times I've seen these bolts strip. The last transmission job we did actually, these bolts were stripped out. One of them was stripped. It was a mess. All right, so this is the EGR valve right here. There's a gasket that you got to peel off too. Don't leave that gasket sitting on there. A lot of coolant in here. Make sure we inspect that, take a close look there, see what's going on. Shouldn't be that much coolant in the EGR. Maybe that gasket's leaking. There shouldn't be any coolant in there. It does use coolant to cool the valve. So, all right. So let's go ahead. So next thing is we got to remove the coolant line off of the basically steam pipe there. This might be tougher than I thought. Hang tight. I think I need like an iPad or something to help me with streaming. I am using my phone for everything. Is not working. Anybody else have that problem? There we go. My phone is everything and it drives me crazy. I need multiple devices. All right, here we go. Back at it. Thank you so much for staying with me. Don't know what happened there. Yeah, EGRs, man, I see you made the comment that you don't like emissions and all that. Luckily, Tennessee got rid of their emissions. Not many people know that, but they don't even have emissions anymore in the state. When I first got here in 2019, they did. And Bowie was in a page to get emissions done. You had to take every single car before we sold it. And, you know, I mean, there would be lines around the block, especially at the end of the month, because, you know, it's a monthly thing. But emissions is, you know, just a scam. There's more crap on these cars. I think they could build a car to be efficient if they didn't have all these emissions standards. So what I'm doing, I'm taking off more of the coolant lines right now. I can't get my phone over here because of the charger. Oh, that's not good. Okay, so a clamp just broke here. That's interesting. How we're gonna handle that? One of these hose clamps broke. The tip broke off. So I'm struggling a little bit with it to get it off of here. Some lubrication, some light. So we're just getting some hose clamps off here. So this one kind of popped on me. Jesus Christ. Definitely compromised. I will have to figure that out. Set that aside for now. Alright. So back to our regular scheduled programming. I was struggling to get that clamp off, and I'm worried it might have compromised the line a little bit, so I might have to trim the line back. Or replace it. So you gotta take this bracket off. This is the shifter cable support bracket. And then that will give you enough room to start removing what I call the most difficult bolts on the car, which is the back lower coolant block bolt. And it can be got with an 8mm ratchet wrench. I always go for it first because it's going to be something that gives me a problem. It's going to be this bolt, and it's just difficult to get to. You can barely see it, but we got a pretty foolproof technique You got to get your finger in there, and you have to do it by hand. So it can take a while. Try to get it by hand a little bit. There we go. There we go. Alright, not too bad. You just can't see it, it's a blind bolt. But that's it. That's the hardest bolt on the car. And again, I've got to get that little ratchet wrench on there and just do it a little bit at a time. All right, let's get the other ones off. Do those with the socket wrench. That's right, the bottom one requires a shorty. Okay, so I'm going to remove this out of the way, and there's the gasket. This is the gasket to the manifold, and then 4 bolts holding it on. I leave the manifold attached in there to the upper coolant hose, and now we have the transmission bolts exposed. So just got a couple little things to clean up here. I forgot to remove the shifter bracket. Shifter bracket. All right. That is definitely everything on the top. Let's get this harness out of the way, and we will take off the upper wire harness. Okay, so this is the main harness we're pulling back. We're just kind of give it a hook and we'll tuck that back there. And now I'm also going to put my strap on that's going to hold my core support up. There we go. Out of the way. go. Harness this back. All right, and I'm going to take out the 2 of the 3. I'm going to loosen all of them. I'm going to take out 2 of the 3 top transmission bolts. I always leave one in up top there. They're 13 millimeters. You got to be careful using too deep of a socket. Your socket wrench can get stuck in here. I usually only use the wrench to break them loose, and then I do everything else by hand. There we go. And again, I'm just removing 2 of the transmission bolts by hand. I cracked all 3 of them loose. And now we're going to go on the lower side and we're going to start removing the last parts before we get, so we can take the subframe out. I always do these. Again, there's the bolts. Let me go aside there. Oh, actually. And you can't see them, but I have containers made over here for each of the bolts. I have them set up in a way so I go in order. All the bolts are organized. They're not labeled or anything. Here, I'll show you what that looks like. But it all walks down all the trim bolts, everything that we've taken off. And again, I just keep it organized so I know where I'm at. All right, so back to that. Just clean up, and then we're putting the car up in the air, and we're going to start working on the bottom side again. So we got to remove this axle. We got to unbolt the exhaust. Take out this lower support. Okay. There we go. All right, 4 pops right there. Under 13s on the bottom bolts. Take one out, take the other one halfway. One out, all the way. Yep. lot of dirt. So that is out of the way and supported, so the radiator's just going to hang there. All right, we got two 10mm bolts for the exhaust. All right, and now we got an axle. I think that is 13s. Yes. Gotta be careful about the O2 sensor wires around here too. If you mess it up too much or play with it too much, you'll end up having to replace the O2 sensor. I know this because I've had to replace quite a few of them, and I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. And I was just being a little careless with one of these bolts up here. It's not this bolt that I'm working on right now, but a different one on the transmission. And I think I was just getting goofed up in the wiring. And those O2 sensors are $190 a piece, the cheapest one. So you gotta be very careful up there. Okay, so now the axle is about to come out, and it slides out, but you do have to rotate the bracket. There it is. And we'll take out the passenger side axle right now. That we just use a typical fork for. There we go. And we reuse the axles, nothing wrong with them. Alright, so axles are out, transmission mount is off. Let's disconnect the wiring harness from the side of the subframe. I did forget to do one thing. I forgot to disconnect the steering rack from the inside. So we'll do that in a second. See if I found my flashlight. Okay, so that is all of the wiring harness disconnected from the subframe. The other wiring harness we'll have to disconnect is over here. This is the power plug for the steering rack. This is a two-hand job. that's disconnected. All right. So now what I do is one by one, before I go take that steering rack down, I'm going to take out these subframe bolts one by one and put them back in with some lube. Now this is where we discover if we're going to have a problem with the subframe bolts. Now this one is as clean as can be, like new. So I'm not worried about that, but on some of these, the amount of torque and pressure you got to put on these. That bolt just went, but we will find it here shortly. There it is. Okay. Now the subframe bolt, I'll put some lubrication on it, and I hand thread it back up in there to hold the subframe. And the reason I do this is when we get this lowered down and on its resting place to remove it, it will be a lot easier to remove it by hand than with having to get a gun under here. So again, very, very clean bolt coming out. But we knew this was a rust-free car to begin with, so we knew this would go pretty easy. Next, two of if one's going to get stuck, it's this driver's front. And again, this one's a good bolt. Yeah, if one gives me problems, it's always this one up here. I don't think this car's ever been apart this far. All right, and last one over here, just to make sure it comes loose. There we go. Lubricate it up. Okay, so now I gotta lower it down. I gotta get inside and disconnect the steering shaft from the rack itself. That's a T40. Sometimes it's a 10 millimeter, but most of the time it's a T40. And then I'll bring over one of my carts. Got one of them around here somewhere. And I will we'll put the subframe onto that cart and we'll actually wheel it out. I'm not going to show you this. I got this brand new lift table. Maybe I'll try this out. I always do a part though. Let's do a part. All right, so again, I use a hand card. Okay. Now I'm gonna set this down on there. Okay. A little more difficult than it usually is. Alright, so we're on the cart. So I guess we'll have to get. We'll still have to disconnect one harness on top of the rack. So the rack's gonna settle in. We got a couple pieces of wire to disconnect over here. Yeah, right now we're just getting the wiring harness off the steering rack to give us some slack to lift this up. So this is coming up. So you can see here, just trying to get this harness off. There we go, fine. Okay, so I'm gonna set this harness here to the side, and then this whole thing will just lift off the subframe. There we go. So there it is. So that is the rack, the subframe, the suspension, all out of the car. So this is what we were prepping everything for. Roll this out of the way. Okay, so now we are one step closer to getting the transmission out. Really all that's left is to disconnect the wiring harness, move it out of the way off of the transmission here, and then we'll be able to start removing it. And again, I'm not doing that tonight. We just wanted to get to the point of having to remove it. I have somewhere I have to be shortly, so I am trying to get as much done as I can, prepping for tomorrow. All right, so this is going to bring us to the conclusion. I could take out some more bolts, transmission bolts, thermostat bolts. Yeah, we'll start working on some of this in a couple of minutes here. All right, so the thermostat's got to get unbolted because underneath of it is another bolt for the transmission. And this just moves out of the way. This is one horizontal bolt. If I don't do it now, I forget about it. So we're just removing bolts from the subframe, or from the transmission, from the block, so we can begin extracting it. I'm just trying to, again, getting some of the busy work out of the way. It's the longest one. And there's a bolt in here that doesn't come out. You actually just leave it in. It comes out of the transmission, but there's not enough room to get it out without removing the lower heat shield of the exhaust. So I just leave the bolt in there and it clears everything. It's never given me a problem before. So I'm just working this bolt out. And if you can believe it, I used to do this job without a lift. We used to have quick jacks, was what we started with before I got a full lift. And yeah, that was crazy doing these on quick jacks. It's a little bit harder, but we've sped it up with time, patience. Okay, that bolt's all the way out. The only one that's left is this one. We will crack this one loose. There you go. And then the transmission is going to start pulling apart. So we are going to call that quits for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in with us. We did about a 2-hour live session. Appreciate all the comments. We will pick this up tomorrow if I can get us streaming and going enough free time in the day. But we'll finish this up. But tomorrow the transmission will come out and then we'll begin the rebuild part of it. So thank you so much. Check us out online at hybridandelectriccarsales.com. Please like and subscribe to our channel. Trying to get to those 1,000 followers. We'll keep putting out good content. So appreciate it. All right, y'all have a good night.